Could the Buffalo Bills double dip at any positions in the 2025 NFL Draft? We're going to break that down and a whole lot more today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time for Herd Mentality, the weekly episode where you control the discussion. We've got some fun stuff to get into today, including some draft scenarios that we will open up with. Then later on, I want to talk about some different needs that the Bills have, and specifically some cornerback discussion. And then in the last segment, we are going to look at the NFC, and I'm going to give you the vibe check. We did this with the AFC a few weeks ago. Today is the NFC's opportunity for a little vibe check. So a lot of fun here. Buckle up. Let's get into it. First one comes from Bo. Bo says, what are your thoughts on double dipping at the corner spot late in the draft? We could find someone on day 3 that could be a scheme fit and also has special teams upside. Well, I do absolutely agree that there are some positions that the Bills should consider double dipping with. And I think cornerback is definitely one of them. And I think pairing an early round selection with a late round selection makes a lot of sense. Not just because they hit on Christian Benford, but like you said, there's a good resume here of the Bills being able to find some meaningful, rosterable players late in the draft at the cornerback position. And so you want to round out your special teams. You want to have more depth, more young players on cost control deals at a position like corner. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I can see corner as being a position where you want to do that. The other spot where I could really understand a double dip is a defensive tackle. I think that's a pretty huge need for the Bills, where that's the other position I would say, yeah, a double dip should be in play, because right now, look at this thing. If the Bills were to play a game right now, and they don't have to, so let's keep that in mind. They're not playing a game until September. Right now, this defensive tackle rotation is, of course, Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones as your starters. Larry Ogunjobi is going to be suspended for 6 weeks. So right now, your third defensive tackle is Dwayne Carter, and certainly we're hoping for him to have a big jump in year 2. We've seen that happen for a lot of Bills' third-round picks, whether that's Dawson Knox or Terrell Bernard, Dorian Williams, Spencer Brown. You've seen this happen with other Bills' third-round picks. Well, it needs to with Dwayne Carter, because right now he's DT3 for this football team. And the guy that you're going to platoon with Daquan Jones is either Zion Logue or who? I mean, Branson Dean, I guess, is signed to a futures deal, and he's definitely more of a penetration style player that I don't really see as a rosterable player in the NFL. So you need guys that are going to take snaps for real snaps for this team. And so I'm absolutely on board with a double dip at defensive tackle. Oh, by the way, let's bring Elianku back in, right? Like, that'd be nice to have that guy in the fray. That way, you can get through this initial 6 weeks knowing you have him. So that's another move that I absolutely support. So definitely need some reinforcements at defensive tackle. I think it's a very, very pressing need. So my double dip positions, corner and defensive tackle. Nick says, with the 6-game suspensions for Hoyt and Ogunjobi, do you anticipate the Bills making moves around the board to acquire talent in the defensive line trenches? Could this push them towards prioritizing depth on the defensive line earlier in the draft? How would your draft board stack up if you were Beane? Yes, I think that defensive line has to be front of mind for this football team. It's a huge need. And of course, I just kind of went through the need at defensive tackle, but When you look at the edge, I don't think it's quite as pressing because, you still have Rousseau, Joey Bosa, A.J. Epinesa, Javon Solomon, right? You can go to war with that. That's not bad. And then you certainly like the outlook there when Michael Hoyt is back. But then you got to think long-term here where Bosa and Epinesa are both expiring contracts. And so you're going to want to have some reinforcements ready to go that are going to command meaningful snaps in 2026, and you love the cost control nature. So I do think that you have short and long-term needs at both D end and D tackle. And of course, like the Eagles, they won the Super Bowl last year because of the strength of their defensive line rotation. Like that's why they did it. I know that there's other pieces of that roster, Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts met the moment. They got good receiving talent. They got a good offensive line, playmakers in the back end. But it really, to me, the leading factor was the strength of their defensive line rotation. And that allowed them to beat the Chiefs. And the Chiefs had a suspect offensive line last year, particularly, with both their right tackle, Juwan Taylor, and then what they had to do with Tooney to put him out at left tackle and then Mike Caliendo starting at guard. They're not in better shape right now. They had traded away Joe Tooney. They're counting on Kingsley Suamaitea to come in and play guard. He failed at tackle last year, a second-round pick. They gave a bunch of money to Jalen Moore, who's been a reserve for the 49ers, while the 49ers need offensive linemen, and they let this guy walk, and they have cap space. And Juwan Taylor's penciled in at right tackle, and he's scheduled to be their starter for at least this year. So I think Kansas City's going to have to once again get through this season with some questions on their offensive line. You'd like to be able to take advantage of that in ways that you haven't been able to in years past. Go get some D-line talent. Next one comes from Jason. Jason would like me to rank 3 different draft scenarios. This is pretty compelling. Draft scenario 1 is give up a second-round pick to move up and draft Michigan defensive tackle Kenneth Grant. Scenario 2 is to give up a 4th-round pick and move up to get Oregon defensive tackle Derek Harmon. Number 3 is stick and pick at 30, but the following players are gone. At corner, Travis Hunter, Will Johnson, and Jahdae Barron are gone. At D tackle, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, and Derek Harmon are gone. On the edge, Abdul Carter, Mike Green, Shamar Stewart, Michael Williams are gone. And at wide receiver, Tet McMillan and Matthew Golden are gone. Who would be the pick? So I will give you who the pick would be, but I'll also rank these scenarios. Number 1, the most attractive scenario here for me is giving up the 4th-round pick to go get Derek Harmon. I think Harmon is as clean of a projection as you will find for the one-tech position for the Buffalo Bills. I would love that selection, and I think the 4th-round pick, and we're going to talk more about trading a 4th-round pick in the next segment, I think that's exactly, you move up, probably get to about 26, from 30 to 26, and that gets you a chance to get Derek Harmon. So that's my favorite scenario. Number 2 would be the stick and pick. And if you stick and pick and you went through the list of players that wouldn't be available to me, I think there's some good corner talent in this scenario, in particular Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. That would be what I do. I would stick and pick Trey Amos. And then the third most attractive scenario of the 3 that were presented is the trading the 2nd-round pick for Kenneth Grant. You've heard me rave about Kenneth Grant. I really like Kenneth Grant, but I really would also like to have the 2 2nd-round picks. I wouldn't want to have a 1st and a 2nd-round pick invested in Kenneth Grant. That's kind of nuts to me. So I wouldn't want to do that. So that would be the third most attractive option of the 3. So very compelling scenarios. Appreciate the question there, Jason. All right, on the other side of it, got some trade conversation to get into in terms of like what I think Beane's biggest trade chip is for this coming draft. I look forward to breaking that down for you, in addition to some cornerback questions, particularly the tackling dynamic of those corners. So we'll do all that here in just a second. Folks, be sure to stick with me. There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute MLB showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup. But finding great seats at a great price, that used to be a challenge until I found Game Time. Game Time makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the events get closer, and with their all-in pricing, you see the total cost up front. No surprises at checkout. Here's why I love using Game Time. Well, it's the priority, last-minute deals. You could save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concert, comedy, and theater events. You can have peace of mind as well with seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and the lowest price guarantee. You can book with total confidence. Plus, they have a lowest price guarantee. That means you're never going to have to worry about overpaying. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's keep it moving here. The next one comes from Ben, and Ben's got like a layered question. So there's like 3 questions in this, so let's kind of work through it. Ben says, I have a herd mentality question based on your recent draft analysis episodes. First, I feel good about McBeane's ability to evaluate and develop later round picks at corner. It's definitely a roster need, but I don't think it should be a priority over the defensive line. I do agree with you, Ben, but I think that's the advantage of having the picks that the Bills have. You have picks 30, 56, and 62. Give me a corner and 2 defensive linemen. You don't have to wait. You don't have to wait on a corner. You can get one with one of those top 3 picks and still get 2 defensive linemen. Like, that's the dream scenario for me. Give me a corner I like. Give me 2 defensive linemen I like, and you check those boxes. Ben continues and says, second, I think a better defensive tackle will help our existing defensive ends more than the other way around. So I feel like that's priority number 1. I also agree there. And I do think that the Bills' greatest need is at defensive tackle, and I certainly broke that down in the opening segment. I don't want to rehash all those talking points, but not only do I think the edge rushers would benefit from the D tackles, but you have a bigger need at D tackle than you do D end. And then Ben continues to say, since the Bills presumably have more draft picks than rookie roster spots, what do you think Beane would have to give up to get high enough in the first round to get one of those bigger name defensive tackles? Or do you think either way there will be someone exciting at 30 and any trade ups would be more efficient in later rounds? I know we shouldn't get married to any one outcome, but just curious on your thoughts there. So my thought here on the trade up is that I think Brandon Beane's big trade chip in this draft is pick 109. That's the Bills' first 4th round pick, pick 109. And Brandon Beane loves to trade 4th round picks on draft day. He's done it multiple times to move up for Edmonds, to move up for Kaiir Elam, to move up for Dalton Kincaid. He parted with the 4th round pick in each of those trades to move up in the first round. And when he moved into the 3rd round, when the Bills didn't have a 3rd round pick to get Dawson Knox, the trade was 2 4th round picks that they had in that draft to go get Dawson Knox. So there's a pretty clear tendency and clear, just behavior here from Brandon Beane that he likes to trade a 4th round pick. In fact, Brandon Beane has completed 7 drafts as the general manager of the Bills. He's about to do his 8th. Only 3 times has he picked in the 4th round. It's kind of nuts because he keeps trading that pick. So I'm calibrated to expect Brandon Beane to trade a 4th round pick. So 109, I think, is the big chip for Brandon Beane in an early trade up. I think once you get outside of that, the Bills could leverage a lot of their 5th and 6th round picks to move up into the 4th, into the 5th, something like that. But in terms of what I'm expecting for a day 1, day 2 trade, it's pick 109 is the chip. And so when you look at the trade value charts, pick 109, according to the chart that I prefer, which is the Rich Hill chart, pick 109 is worth 76 points. So if you package that with pick 30, that'll get you to about pick 26. And that's where the Rams are picking at 26. And I think that's a very logical team to want to trade up with because the Rams are missing some capital this year. They're bottom 5 in terms of overall draft capital. If you want to move up from 56, which is the Bills' first 2nd round pick, and you package 109, that's going to give you enough to get to about pick 48 or 49. So 56 plus 109 is going to get you to about 48 or 49. And the teams picking in that range are the Cardinals, Dolphins, and Bengals. Then if the Bills wanted to trade up from 62 plus 109 that's going to get you to about pick 51 or 52 where the Broncos and Seahawks are picking. So that's kind of, if you're looking at past behaviors, apply it to this draft. That's kind of what I'm thinking the Bills would want to do in terms of those moves up the board on day one or day two. But then you obviously can look at a world where the Bills trade up from 109. So let's say they stick and pick at 30, 56, and 62, but they want to get into the third round, which is totally possible. We've seen Brandon Beane do this. He always loves to pick into the third round. In fact, every time that he's went into a draft without a third round pick, he still made a third round pick. So the Kelvin Benjamin traded away the third round pick. That was the year where they packaged 2 fourth-rounders to move into the third round, and they drafted Dawson Knox. Then the Bills traded away their third-round pick for Rasul Douglas. And then we saw the corresponding move there was what the Bills did last year. They moved back with Kansas City. They got that third-round pick that they used to pick Dwayne Carter. Now here we are again, right? No third-round pick, 2 fourths. I'm not sure how Beane's going to do it, but I expect him to pick in the third round, whether that's, again, packaging those fourth-round picks to get into the third round. Maybe you trade back. I'm totally prepared for the Bills to trade out of the first round again and pick up that third-round pick. So there's going to be some different ways that Beane can do it, but I'm fully expecting 2 things: for him to trade 109 and for him to find a way into the third round. So some of my trade expectations for this coming draft. Michael says, based on Brandon Beane's comments about cornerbacks having to be able to tackle, could you state which of your top cornerbacks from your episodes on corners might be ruled out and which are the best fits? Really good question. And I was on with Jeremy White on WGR. I do a weekly interview with them Wednesdays at 8 a.m. And so we kind of got into this conversation, and it prompted me to share a story about Ron Rivera. And of course, Ron Rivera, one of the influences in Sean McDermott, and, you know, Rivera was the head coach when McDermott was the DC in Carolina that eventually got him the head coaching job in Buffalo. And so Ron Rivera, I remember very much listening to him on a radio interview here in Charlotte. And he was asked about, it was like before the season, he was asked about the upside of the defense and how he felt the defense was going to look. And the way that he answered that question was something I'll never forget. Ron Rivera said, the success of our defense will be directly tied to how well our cornerbacks tackle. Like, that was the leading thought on his head. And so just with him being such an influence to Sean McDermott, you know that this tackling thing matters. Now, as for the crop of corners that I've discussed with you on this podcast, I don't really take exception with any of them as guys that don't really tackle. I would say the one that's least impressive is Trey Amos out of Ole Miss. I don't think he has as big of an appetite, and I think he's more of a latch-on, drag-down tackler than a guy that really wants to square up and aim low and bring his feet through contact. I said that on that podcast. I don't think he's terrible at it. It's just you don't see the same appetite as you do for the other corners, and I would say they all are strong tacklers and willing run defenders. Now, what's even more interesting here is that the Bills have, under Sean McDermott, picked 2 first-round corners, Trey White and Kaiir Elam. Neither of them strong tacklers. I think you heard me talk about Trey White multiple times on this podcast. I said it's an obvious hole in his game. Like, he's never been a very good tackler or run defender. Kaiir Elam, coming out of Florida, that was the knock on him, was tackling and run defense. So for as much as they've made it known that that's a priority, and they're certainly messaging that you would believe that it is, look at the 2 players that they drafted. Neither one of them strong tacklers or run defenders. So it's interesting to see the congruency between the messaging and the behaviors. But I think there's also a conversation to be had about, I don't think the Bills are a team that is uncomfortable with bringing in players that have things to work on, improve upon. In fact, I think the Bills prefer not having guys that come in as totally finished products. Look at some of the players they've drafted. Josh Allen, Tremaine Edmonds, Dawson Knox, Spencer Brown, Greg Rousseau. These guys weren't polished players coming out of Dalton Kincaid, like guys that needed some work. I think the Bills are really satisfied to find like physical upside with like a mental makeup and habits that they really like, and believe that, hey, in our ecosystem, we can get you to that best version of yourself. And I think they actually prefer to have some meat on the bone where they can influence and develop some certain areas. So a lot of layers to that conversation. John says one thing that repeatedly comes up in the context of cornerbacks is whether a particular corner is better at man versus zone coverage. This was especially relevant when recently when Kaiir Elam was traded. What are the physical or other traits that would enable one cornerback to excel in one of those coverage schemes but not the other? It's a good question. To play man coverage, and let me say this first. The NFL is a zone league. Every team plays zone more than they do man, okay? It's a zone league. Some teams play a little bit more man than the other, but every team mostly plays zone. In order to play man coverage in the NFL, you do have to have athleticism, right? Like the receiver knows where he's going. The cornerback doesn't. You need to be athletic. You have got to be able to have the foot quickness, the hip flexibility, and the pattern matching skills to stay in phase and cover in man. So there's a baseline of athleticism that you just have to have. You also have to have a physical element to your game to be able to play in press coverage. Like, you got to be able to get in the face of a guy at the line of scrimmage, create jams, disrupt route timing, and then you have to have the functional athleticism to create that jam and then turn and run. You got to be able to move. I think cornerback playing man coverage in the NFL is one of the hardest things to do in sports. And athleticism gives you a chance. You got to cover Tyreek Hill, and he knows where he's going, and you don't. You need athleticism for that. For zone, you can sacrifice some athleticism here, but you also have to keep in mind that eventually every zone becomes man. So you can't be completely deficient as an athlete. You're playing kind of in a half turn, eyes in the backfield. So your eyes in the backfield, you still have to be able to feel routes. You have to be able to anticipate, squeeze routes, eyes in the backfield. You have got to be able to play with vision. You have to be a much more instinctive player as opposed to just, hey, I need to mirror and match in man. Now you have to play with vision and have really good eye discipline and understand your coverage landmarks, understand where your help is, understand how to leverage different route combinations and squeeze. It's a different ballgame. I think it's actually harder. Mentally, it's harder to play zone than man. Physically, it's harder to play man than zone. And then also in zone coverage, defending the run is a bigger emphasis. In man coverage, it could be a run play. Your job is to cover that receiver. It could be a run play, and that receiver runs a vertical route, and you're just, okay, we're going to run down the field together. You don't have to tackle anybody. You don't have zero run fit responsibilities. In zone, yeah, you're the D-gap defender. You better get down there and tackle that guy. So you can see there's a lot of differences, but keep in mind, the NFL is a zone league. And from there, it's what varying levels of appetite do teams have to play man coverage. And maybe the Bills will be a team that has an uptick in man coverage. I can certainly see that happening this year. All right, folks, on the other side of it, we're talking vibes, NFC vibes. So be sure to stick with me. All right, folks. So a few weeks ago, I did power rankings of the AFC solely through the lens of vibes. And some people loved it, and I got great feedback. Some people said, you know what? I hated that. If you don't want to hear my vibes rankings of the NFC, I hope you enjoyed the first 23 minutes of this podcast. This part's not going to be for you. But I did get a lot of feedback, and Chris Yankee requested this, and Chris's birthday was this week on Wednesday, so happy birthday to Chris. And I'm excited now to give you my power ranking of the NFC through the lens of vibes. And I had some fun with this. I actually have 6 tiers of vibes. All right. So we'll have some fun here. Again, this is not like top to bottom in terms of how good I think these teams are. This is solely based on the vibes. So we'll go top to bottom, best vibes to worst vibes. So in the top bucket, these teams, I think the vibes are great. There's 4 teams in this bucket. Number 1, the Philadelphia Eagles. They won the Super Bowl. You think they care that they traded away Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, or Mekhi Becton's not back, or they lost Milton Williams, or Josh Sweat in free agency? You think they care? Brandon Graham retired? You think they care? They just won the freaking Super Bowl. They're high on everything. Obvious choice for number 1 vibes in the NFC. Number 2, the Washington Commanders. Talk about exceeding expectations. who had Washington going to the NFC Championship game last year. And I still don't think from a talent perspective, they were even close to the second most talented team in the NFC. Caught lightning in a bottle. They got this Jaden Daniels dude. And I think that says the most about Jaden Daniels, what he is as a quarterback. Could you imagine having that guy? You're a Washington fan. You must be beside yourself. So excited to have that guy. Some talent around him. They've continued to be a pretty aggressive team with some trades, building up around the rookie quarterback. Now he's not a rookie anymore, but good-looking young player. I think the vibes are high in Washington, especially coming out of the Dan Snyder absolute dumpster fire for years and years. You feel like you got things going, right? A competent organization, talking about new stadium. I mean, everything seems good in Washington. If the Eagles didn't win the Super Bowl, this would be the number one team for vibes in the NFC. Third in the vibes are great bucket, Chicago Bears. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I love everything that's happening in Chicago, but I think the way that they are perceiving things, they are excited. Ben Johnson's been the hot name for head coaching for the last several years. They got him away from the Detroit Lions. They certainly feel like they have a really talented young quarterback in Caleb Williams. Traded for some offensive linemen. They feel like they probably got that going. Still some pieces on defense, assets in this draft. I think the Bears are feeling real good about what they got going on. In some ways, I think they're like the Patriots version of the NFC, where when I did the AFC vibes, and the Patriots number one. I think this is the NFC equivalent. The last team in the vibes are great bucket, number 4, the Los Angeles Rams. I think very high of Sean McVay. I think their player development in Los Angeles is exceptional. I think they've went through so many different iterations of how they've built their team. Got some young talent. The defensive front looks strong and young. And, of course, they bring back Matthew Stafford. I think that in terms of like in the landscape of the NFL, I think the most significant player move was the Rams keeping Matthew Stafford, because I think they're a legit Super Bowl contender with Matthew Stafford. Without him, I don't think so. And so I think that's significant. Plus they got Devontae Adams. Cooper Kupp's gone. The guy's always hurt. They get Devontae Adams to go with Puka Nacua. I like what's going on with the Rams. I think they're pretty excited about what's going on too. So that's the upper echelon. Vibes are great. Now we get into a tier that has 2 teams where I say things are strong. In terms of the vibes are strong. They're not great, but they're strong. Atlanta Falcons at number 5. Somewhere that GM, Terry Fontenot, is smiling year to year for the criticism he took for drafting Michael Penix. And the outlook now, right? Penix kind of came in, had a pulse late in the season. Kirk Cousins looked terrible. Took a lot of heat. Now they got this guy. They got some young weapons. Offensive line's good. Now they got some stuff to figure out on defense still. But I think they're feeling pretty good about where they're at. I think they think they're on the cusp. I don't know if I agree with that, but I think they do. Also in this bucket is Tampa Bay. People forget the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have won that division 4 years in a row. Baker Mayfield looks great. They brought back their guys. Levante David's back. Chris Godwin's back. Bucky Irving as this young running back looks good. Some questions on defense to figure out, but Hassan Reddick, I think, is a great addition. I think Tampa's feeling pretty good about their chances to win that division for a 5th year in a row. The next bucket has 4 teams, and I label this bucket as things are good, but we're a little nervous, right? A little nervous. At the Green Bay Packers, number 7. You know, their everybody eats mentality didn't work out so good for them this year, right? Didn't work out so good. Jordan Love, some injuries. They paid him a bunch of money after a very small sample size of good games. Maybe they're wondering if that was the right choice. Questions in the corner, questions at corner, questions in the defensive line. Still some good young talent on the defense, though. They probably feel pretty good, but they're lying if they, internally, I think they're a little nervous, right? A little bit nervous about some things. Then we have the Detroit Lions at number 8. Again, things are good. Talented roster. Dan Campbell. We just lost a lot of coaching. We lost a ton of coaching. And if you look at Detroit, they've got some huge, huge, huge contracts coming up. Things are good. We're a little nervous. Minnesota Vikings at number 9. Boy, they should be excited about this Kevin O'Connell, right? I think he's been terrific as their head coach. But they're handing things over to J.J. McCarthy, and I like J.J. McCarthy a ton. I'm very excited for him. But they just went on this big run with Sam Darnold. A lot of talent on the roster. They've been pretty aggressive in free agency. But they're handing this over to a guy that's never played it down, coming off of an ACL in his rookie season. I like J.J. McCarthy. Vibes are good. Or lying if we're not a little bit nervous. Then I have the Carolina Panthers at number 10. Bryce Young had a pulse. Boy, was he a disaster. Late in the season, post-benching, he came in and looked okay. Is he going to be a difference-maker quarterback? Probably not. But he went from, my goodness, I don't think you can play, to, oh, maybe you have a little something to you. Maybe you can be this point guard extraordinaire. Now, they got a lot to figure out on defense. But I think things are looking a lot better, but we're still a little nervous. The next tier, I have 3 teams in. The tier I label, I think we're okay, but maybe not. San Francisco 49ers. They've had to transition a lot of that roster. And I'm not sure they've had the internal replacements necessary to feel good about it, right? O-line, they need a lot of help there. D-line, they need a ton of help there. And oh, by the way, they got to figure this out with Brock Purdy. Boy, I don't envy that choice. Purdy's got some nice highs. The lows are bad, and he's physically limited. Maybe we're okay. Maybe we're ready to become a good team in the NFC again. Maybe not. And that Purdy extension's a big old thing they got to figure out. Now the Arizona Cardinals at number 12. I think we're okay, but maybe not. I think Monty Ossenfort's done a good job as their GM. I think he's had a lot of work to do to get this roster to a point of feeling like they're okay in terms of talent. And I thought they've made some good additions this offseason to their defensive line, which I thought was a huge issue. But you have to think there's a part of them that just wonders, can we do this with Kyler Murray? He's going to have some really good highs, but is he clutch? Is he that dude? Are we in purgatory? But with a dynamic player that's not always good? Monty Ossenfort didn't draft Kyler Murray. I think we're okay. Maybe not. I think that's the right bucket for them. Seattle, 13. I mean, you brought Sam Darnold in? Who knows, right? Certainly had some good moments with the Vikings. Then at the end of the year, he reminded you exactly of who he always has been. Back-breaking mistakes, the worst possible times. Your offensive line's not good enough. You trade away DK Metcalf. Do you even have any perimeter receivers? Tyler Lockett's no longer there. New offensive coordinator, which I like because I thought the guy Ryan Grubb was a disaster last year. Maybe we're okay. Maybe not. Then I have one team in this bucket. This is the La Land bucket. It's the New Orleans Saints. They hadn't been honest about what's going on there for 5 years. Mickey Loomis is a joke of a GM. Cap hell all the time. Having to extend and stay committed to players like Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara just to be able to get passable in terms of the cap and compliancy. No depth on the roster. Cam Jordan's, expired, it seems. Talent's leaving, not coming. But I don't think they know. La Land. That's what I describe the Saints as. And then the last 2 teams of this bucket's called We're Nervous. Number 15, I have the Giants. Make or break year for Brian Daboll and Joe Shane. And you got Russell Wilson as your quarterback. Boy, that's tough. And I think there's some areas of this roster that are pretty good. They come a long way. Still some issues. I think their O-line has a low ceiling. I think their defensive tackle group outside of Dexter Lawrence leaves a lot to be desired. I think they probably need another receiver. They got some unproven players that I have questions about at tight end, at running back. Questions. But it's make or break in. Russell Wilson. You watch this guy play over the last 3 years? Boy, he's rough. I think he's going to drive Brian Daboll absolutely insane. So they get boxed out of Aaron Rodgers. They get boxed out of Cam Ward. And to fall into Russell Wilson, good luck. Good luck. And at number 16, the Dallas Cowboys. It'll be tough to be a Cowboys fan. I think Jerry is just lost. He's absolutely lost. They don't get any of their deals done with their players, and then when they get them done, they're way more expensive than they have to be. Is Trayvon Diggs going to be able to play? Do we have a running game to lean on? Do we have another receiver besides CeeDee Lamb that matters? Is there enough at defensive tackle? Yeah, I mean, the least inspiring head coach hire you could have possibly made in Brian Schottenheimer. Not great. Not great. I think Jerry Jones is just, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be a Cowboys fan. Not with the way that I look at team building and like what smart right things are. That'd be tough for me. It'd be real tough. So they're in the weird nervous bucket. So there you have it. Vibes in the NFC. Hopefully you enjoyed that. If not, just let me know, I guess, right? Yeah, everybody let me know that they didn't like the AFC part. Or maybe you tuned out before I even got into it. So anyways, that was fun. I enjoyed it. Hope that you did as well. Hope that you come back. Got a lot of content still, of course. The daily podcast here. Draft is like 2 weeks away. We got to get more ready for that. Post-draft coverage. All kinds of stuff. 2025 season to get ready for. You know we're going to cover it all here on Locked On Bills. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.